This is a shocking incident in Iran. A woman is wearing a white wedding dress, but her lower body is buried in the soil. Her hands are tied tightly by a rope. Under her father's order, her husband picks up a sharp stone and throws it at her. Blood flows from the forehead. The woman is in great pain, but the people around her shout like they are killing pigs. Then there are her two sons who are pregnant in October. More stones come from these inhumane people in the village. In just a few minutes, the woman was hit to death. Split human nature or civil mourning. These things are the result of adultery. Girl's name is Replicant May. Her father sold her to the city when she was a girl and 13 years old. Repeatedly, they grew up war happens for her. But in her life, reporter May has never been reproachful as a woman. Because she has no respect for women, even she has never been careful about her own shape. She always burying her body. In this man-powerful country, reporter May is very bold to expose own innocence. She often deals with a world-acing criminal. One day, a prisoner was sent to the prison. The prisoner bribed Sang-kun to help him with the charges. After the trial, he married his 13-year-old daughter. At the same time, he will also buy a sports car for her. He will also buy a house for her in the city. According to local law, a married couple is allowed to marry for a long time. Sang-kun, who was in love, wanted to get a house. But with his low salary, he couldn't support two wives at the same time. So he decided to divorce Soraya. But if he proposed a divorce, he would have to pay the woman's adoption fee. But the man didn't have money, so he found the elders in the village. He hoped he could help persuade Soraya to propose a divorce, so she didn't have to pay the adoption fee after the divorce. Sang-kun helped Soraya get out of the prison. Yeah, so now you're sending to G. Right, he can only be silent and unbearable, but Sang-kun is even worse. He says to his son, "This woman is the one who stopped them from going to the city for a good cause." Soraya couldn't help but say a few words, but was humiliated by her eldest son. In the turmoil of male power, the birth mother can't get the respect of her son. Soraya was heartbroken and had no choice but to clean up the house. In the hearts of her sons, she was a witch who disregarded the happiness of her children. It was a shackle that stopped them from going to the city. But in exchange, it was just a single beating. She couldn't remember how many times this was a domestic violence. Soraya didn't want to swallow her anger anymore. She led her daughters to run to her aunt's house. Aunt was the only independent woman in this male-dominated society. She watched Soraya's body full of wounds. The only thing she can do is to sigh helplessly as well and try to convince Soraya to leave, aging Sesergam assuredly. She didn't want to put whenever Soraya's eyes getting dirty, just when she's worried about her life, according to the situation. Sansara has no way to face the impending bad, when the next door of the Buddha's new wife is dead. Furthermore, there is only the son who decapitated and the old Buddha who Imperial's heart broken. Soraya and the aunt are helping when the groups of women covered with blackness rush to Buddha's old mansion. According to local customs, after the old woman died, her possessions only become sovereign. On the day of getting sick, Sansara had left some of her things. Sansara and her elders sat in front of Buddha's old house. Because the men here only know how to farm, not how to cook. All the housework is done by women. They came to Aunt and asked Soraya to take care of her father. She only needs to do laundry and cook. She can make money and revenge every month. Soraya is glad to hear the news, in order to support the woman and save money to leave her husband. Soraya goes to her father's house to help in the daytime and goes back to her aunt's house at night. The money she earned is also given to her aunt. There is no domestic violence, no quarrels, and the long current smile is also on her face. Happiness is so simple one day after another. Life is coming to a standstill, but an unexpected encounter has left Sang-kun, who has yet to give up, in a terrible state. A plan that will put Soraya in a desperate situation is about to be launched. Soraya is in a critical condition. When Reza comes to Talal, he will follow her to the door. I don't have time for them. A woman is in an opaque wedding gown, but heavily tied with a rope and buried into a 1-meter-high earth. Her husband brought the officer's stone and hit her prostitute across the ear. Then she struck down the two young men she'd offered with her life. The men in the village celebrated, but the women were still ugly and desirable for it. Under the instigation of the elder, the The two married women broke some and said they were going out for a picnic. In this dismal chai hour, for women could not return back into land as they got an extremely harsh torture from the marriage ministry. The lords wanted to change one old lady to rename it on Center of Courtesy, like the rumors of backed women-raised homophobia. One daughter-in-law sees a demonic fairy seems to be plotting something with Sunday. She makes visits to her old man to find out he was planning to seduce Celia. She comes to her niece pretending for the try so that Sunday would notice he's plotting the thing. But that is the one thing that causes her economic loses. In this place above the South Pole, Soraya doesn't even have the right to explain. Fortunately, my aunt came in time to bring Soraya home. Then the village chief came over. Zhang Kun insisted that his wife had an affair with the old king, and they slept together every night. In the face of the village chief's order, Soraya denied it on the spot. But at this time, the old king knocked on the door and entered. The old king said that Soraya often rests in his bed after work, and often talked to her on the side of the bed, in order to talk quietly when she hear that Soraya can't sit still. She'd ask why the king said that she only wanted to make some living, but she was viciously abused. And the village chief said, "Your behavior is inappropriate for a wife and a mother. To prove your innocence, you should have evidence." Why wouldn't I prove my innocence? I need to prove my innocence. And the village chief said, "According to the local law, if a woman needs to prove her innocence, she will have to ask the village chief. If the wife is the one accusing the husband, the woman has to prove the evidence. This is a very thick-skinned rule. After the witness, the village head will gather the whole village to have a meeting to discuss how to punish Soraya for her crime. The aunt's family comes with a group of women to watch her. They see the black hair on the woman's head. The aunt realizes the seriousness of the situation. At this time, Soraya can only wait for the judgment of fate at home. Soon, the men in the village and the ancestral hall came out. The vote is passed through Soraya guilty. The execution of the cruel execution of Soraya will be carried out. The judge is Soraya's father. What vote for? We are you. The whole village is cheering. It's hard to imagine that this is a moral funeral or a humane funeral. With the sound of a gunshot, the men in the village take up their hammers and take action. Some people draw the death line with their white faces. Some people dig a pit to bury people on the ground. They want to bury the shame. Burial is not fair. The children push the cart to collect all kinds of tools on the side of the road. A stone with a clear angle. It's a blood-sucking hunter. The boys don't seem to know what it's for. They are busy collecting these stones. But do they know that it is not known? In their eyes, it seems to be just a frenzy. The informant's aunt wanted to elope with her niece, but the front door was blocked by a village man. At the back door, there are 10 marksmen. Soraya knew she couldn't escape. She gave her necklace to her little daughter and the ring to her older daughter. This is her only property in this life. She asked the aunt to wait for her daughters to grow up. On the way to the execution site, the children and passers-by were knocking on the stones in their hands. Every sound of the clatter seemed to come from the depths of the soul. The village head was packing up his belongings in the village. Then he prayed to the unknown statue in the dark room. The elder was dressed up under the prayer of the women who were wearing black silk. It seemed to show respect for the execution that was about to come, but behind it was the fire star that wanted to kill the women. Under the escort of the soldiers, Soraya was escorted to the square. The village head and the elders stood on the high platform talking about Soraya's crime. They also said that every time they threw a stone, they could find glory for the village. How deeply was Soraya buried? The first stone is thrown by the father. The cruel execution is about to begin. The woman takes off her headgear and stares at the unbearable face of the two men. Then the woman's hands are tied by the rope and buried in the creak of the drums, wearing the bottom half of her wedding dress. She is about to face a cruel execution known as betrayal. The only thing the woman looks like is indifference. Only a heart that feels like dying for this dark world. All the men around are excited and excited. Even the father next door said he was no longer my daughter. I am the one who will carry the glory. The first one to throw out the stone will be the one who win. Not sure that is the true master or the old man. The 3 stones are not hit. This is the one who will carry the glory. The one who will carry the glory. The men around are silent. They are afraid that this is the real master. But the cruel husband picked up the stone and hit the wife. The sharp stone was hit on the forehead. The cheering is heard again. The sad aunt fainted. The men in the village are fighting fiercely, picking up sharp stones one by one. The statues are already full of blood. No one cares about the truth, and no one cares about her life and death. The women around her keep crying, afraid that others have no strength. The husband also distributes stones to others. The woman's white wedding dress has turned red. Every stone is a countdown to life and death, just to give a little more darkness to the few human natures. The stone that came in a hurry has already turned red. When Gada showed triumph over an isolated community, she can regain her wife. Her eldest regrets his decision. Her youngest hopes for the best. Maybe now they know the meaning of marriage. According to local regulations, those who go through the process of elimination from the schedule can't be buried in their graveyards. They easily get kicked out in the wilderness. One moment after the himself-defeated surrender, the village celebrated entirely the fire welcome and held a celebratory celebration. The second day, my aunt arrived at the river. After one night, the wood was left behind. On the way back to the village, she found an outsider repairing the car. As soon as she arrived, in the map to my aunt's house. After the man came to my aunt's house, my aunt told the reporter everything that happened before and yesterday. After the reporter listened, he turned off the radio. Vilias's teardrops poured down like rain. He promised his aunt he'd make it all clear, but the old king had intervened. Watching the radio on the table, he turned around and left. And at this time, the old king was talking to the villagers about what he had just seen. He saw Sankun driving a luxury car and came over. It turns out that the perpetrator will not escape death. He can't make a winning decision. Now he is going to return the luxury car. The mechanism is too smart, and after all, it's a pity. And he misjudged the clemency of the gods. And when the reporter just left, he was stopped by a senior, saying his reputation was threatened, and declared, until all the evidence was destroyed, he was allowed to leave. But his aunt had already guessed that the villagers' urine was bleeding. She came to the outskirts of the village early. She was holding a real tape in her hand. She gave the tape to the reporters. When the elders reacted, it was already late. The movie ended. This seemingly absurd plot is actually a movie based on a real incident. The story took place on the first floor in 1986. At that time, the Middle East region abused blood and used cruel torture to punish women who were disloyal to marriage. And the reporter in the movie was also a real incident. He took the truth out of the feudal village and wrote the story into a book to expose their malice to the world. When the book was asked, it aroused the attention of the whole world. In 2008, the movie was released. The world finally knew about Soraya's experience. The issue of women's rights in the Middle East was finally solved. But so far, in some places where feudalism is lagging behind, there are still many places that abuse selfishness. What's more, the movie triggers people to think negatively about human nature. May all be equal. May the world no longer have such unfair treatment. May all the girls with the most beautiful smiles be treated gently. I'm Li Bai. See you next time. See.